The police chased it and lost track of it. There are reports of zeuglodons still living. This is a sort of like a dinosaur-type creature, swims in the water, but has two flippers. And the head is like an alligator, great big, huge alligator-like head, but only two front flippers. In Newport, Arkansas, in the White River, there were many reports for years of the White River monster. Not the white water monster. Okay, she's New York senator now. But many people reported the White River monster. In 1972 was the last sighting of the White River monster. I talked to the man who took the pictures. His name is Cloyce Allen. He said, Mr. Hovind, I took a whole roll of pictures of that thing because we've been out there fishing for years, and everybody laughed at it, laughed at us, claiming there's a big animal in this water. He said the river was 100 feet deep right there. The White River was in Newport or Jacksonport, Arkansas. It filled in a big rainstorm in '73, I think, and it's only about 50 feet deep now, or at least last report. But he said, I had this roll of film, excellent pictures of this creature. I took them to the newspaper office and said, here, I didn't even take them out of the camera. I don't want to be accused of fraud. You guys develop the film and publish the pictures. Well, they deal mainly with black and white film at the newspaper, and so they just assumed it was black and white film, and they developed it with black and white developer and ruined the entire roll of color film. They said, Mr. Warren, we have some bad news. We wrecked your film. He said, man, I don't know if I can get more pictures, but I'll try. And he got this photograph showing just the bumps down the back going across the screen there. On the far right would be the head, what he said was the head of this creature. That was like a giant alligator head. But hasn't been seen since '72. In 1973, though, Arkansas designated that stretch of the river as a monster sanctuary. It is unlawful to molest, kill, trample, or harm the White River monster. In Jupiter, Florida, there have been many reports of a creature similar to this, like a plesiosaur, swimming off the coast of Jupiter, Florida. I met this man, and he said, Mr. Hovind, in the 1950s, I was flying off Jupiter, Florida. It was 7 or 8 miles out over the Gulf Stream. The water was glass calm. Suddenly, I saw an animal. Its head came out of the water, and its eyes stayed trained on me as I made another pass. It appeared to be 30-plus feet long. Having seen the creature taken by the Japanese fishing boat, and later the drawing in the National Enquirer, I would say this is the same creature. I did not tell anyone, for fear they would think I was nuts. I was working for Pratt & Whitney Aircraft Company with high security. Later, my brother and I caught a pygmy sperm whale for the Miami Sea Aquarium. I hope this will further support your belief. There have been so many reports, and just about everywhere I go, someone will come and say, Brother Hovind, I've seen one, but I never told anybody, because they're going to think you're crazy. There's a lake between New York and Vermont called Lake Champlain, where many folks claim they've seen the Lake Champlain monster. I mean, there have been hundreds of reported sightings of this creature. This book is called Champ, Beyond the Legend. It's out of print now, but if you have an old copy, I'd like to get some more back. We bought every one they had. We sold it till they ran out. This photograph on the front was taken by Sandy Mancy. I went and met with Sandy Mancy, interviewed her. We put the interview of me talking to Sandy at the end of this tape, and you can listen to Sandy. In one of our conversations, I said, Sandy, do you think you saw a dinosaur? She said, no. I know I saw a dinosaur. She and her husband and 2 kids watched it for 10 minutes. When I showed her the plesiosaur, she said, yeah, it looked like that, but the neck was shorter. In 1998, Discover magazine ran this article. They said, in Lake Champlain, 58 passengers aboard the Ethan Allen reported that a creature 30 to 35 feet long with 3 to 5 humps cruised with their boat about 200 feet off the port side for 5 minutes. The skipper said, don't tell me it was a carp or a sturgeon. If it was a fish, it weighed 3,000 or 5,000 pounds. That's what he said about it. The Bible talks about these dragons in the waters, the dragon in the sea. Right here in Pensacola, Florida, back in 1962, 5 teenagers in their late teens went scuba diving to go out to the Massachusetts, the sunken ship in the harbor out here, you know. How many have seen the Massachusetts out there? 1 kid survived. Here's the story he told. He was about 18 years old when this happened. He said, we were in an Air Force rescue raft bound for a sunken ship a few miles off the coast. Midway out, we were caught in a storm and dragged out to sea. When the storm cleared, we were in a dense fog, and we began to hear strange noises, rather like the splashing of a porpoise, also a sickening odor like that of dead fish. The noise got closer to the raft, and we heard a loud hissing sound. Out in the fog, we saw what looked like a long pole about 10 feet high, sticking straight up out of the water. On top was a bulb-like structure. I think he's meaning shaped like a light bulb, round on one end with a pointed on the other end, like the creature. That's my interpretation here. Okay? It bent in the middle and went under. It appeared several more times, getting closer to the raft. The silence was broken once again by something out of the fog. I can only describe it as a high-pitched whine. We panicked. All 5 of us put on our fins and went into the water. "Keep together and try for the ship," I yelled. After we were in the water, we became split up in the fog. From behind, I could hear the screams of my comrades one by one. I got a closer look at the thing just before my last friend went under. The neck was about 12 feet long, brownish green and smooth looking. The head was like a sea turtle, except more elongated. He said the eyes were green with oval pupils. In a different story, because he did several interviews right after this happened, Pensacola News-Journal said, "We're not going to tell people got eaten by a sea monster. We're just going to publish that they drowned." So that's what the News-Journal said. They said, "You realize this is people come here for the beach. What would happen to tourism? Look what happened with the shark attacks. Who wants to go swimming now?" In another book, though, this guy said, "I don't know how long it was before we heard a scream. It lasted maybe half a minute. Then I heard Warren call, 'Hey, help me, it's got Brad. I've got to get out of here.' His voice was cut off abruptly by a short cry. 'Brad, Warren, hey, where is everybody?' I yelled back at the top of my lungs. Larry now swam with Eric and me. Warren and Brad were nowhere in sight. Right next to Eric, that telephone pole-like figure broke water. I could see the long neck and 2 small eyes. The mouth opened and it bent over. It dove on top of Eric, dragging him under. I screamed and began to swim past the ship. My insides were shaking uncontrollably." He was the only survivor. He said, "I finally made it to the ship, stayed there the rest of the night. Next morning, swam to shore and was found by the rescue unit." That's the sketch he drew. I found Edward Brian McCleary. He now lives in Jacksonville, Florida, and refuses to talk about it. I called. He said, "Oh." Handed the phone to his wife. She said, "Mr. Hovind, you don't understand. I don't know what happened to my husband, but when he was a teenager, something happened in Pensacola, Florida, and he became an alcoholic and a drug addict. And right now he's a recovering alcoholic. He's working in an alcohol rehab center, and he doesn't want to talk about it." I said, "Okay." But I think if he understood how it all fit into biblical perspective, it would make a lot more sense to him. I was preaching in Fort Walton Beach, and a lady came and said, "Mr. Hovind, my son was one of the kids who was eaten. The story you are telling is exactly correct." Happened back in 1962. I told this story in Panama City when I was preaching, and the Lutheran church had sent their youth director to the meeting. He said, "Mr. Hovind, I was driving the van for our church, and all of my teenagers and I were going over the bridge into Panama City, and we saw a creature look just like that out in the water in Panama City." Wow. Could it be we've been brainwashed about the idea of dinosaurs living millions of years ago? I mean, is it just possible that maybe God's word is correct and dinosaurs did not live millions of years ago? There have been many reports of pterodactyls still living. I could go 2 days on this, so I'll shorten this down and then we'll close this here. But there are lots of reports of pterodactyls still flying around. In Africa, they call the creature the kangamato. I got a call one day at my office, and this guy said, "Mr. Hovind, my name is," and he gave this huge name. He said, "I'm from Africa." He said, "The people here call me Steve because they can't pronounce my first name." So we called him Steve Romandi. He said, "I'm on the Kenya Olympic team. I'm a runner, I think 500 kilometers or something like that." He said, "I'm a student going to school at Louisiana State University." He said, "I just saw your videotape, and you mentioned pterodactyls are still alive." He said, "I didn't know they're called pterodactyls. We call them the kangamato, but you're right, they're still alive. We have them in our village back in Kenya." He said their favorite food to eat is decaying human flesh. So if somebody dies, you have to bury them real deep and put rocks on top, or kangamato will come dig them up and eat them. That's what he told me. Frank Melland, the African explorer, kept hearing about the much-feared creature called the kangamato, said to live in the swamps near Rhodesia at the Belgian Congo. He asked the natives what it was. They told him it was a bird. Not exactly a bird, though, more like a lizard with wings of skin like a bat. When he showed them a picture of a pterodactyl, they said, "That's it. Yay, that's it. That's the bat. Kangamato." Right there. That's showing them a pterodactyl. 2 cowboys shot and killed a pterodactyl, apparently, in Arizona in 1890. They couldn't drag the whole thing back, so they cut off the wingtips and took them back to the local saloon and nailed them up on the wall. Say, hey, fellas, what is this? We don't know. Whatever it was, we just killed one out in the desert. Missionary came to me and said, Brother Hovind, I've got people in my church in Venezuela that we try to deal with, these natives down there. They're scared stiff of the giant bat. I kept trying to talk to him. What is this giant bat you're afraid of? Here's the story that he told me. He said this bat was said to capsize canoes and carry off Indians. I met with him in '98. He told me the Indians, terrified of this great bat, had sent one of their bravest men to the head of the river where they killed one of the creatures about 30 years ago and buried